All right, we should be recording and also live streaming at this point. And Bruce, we have 4 people in attendance. I know sometimes we go ahead and move them over. Do you want to just move them over for this evening, or?
Yeah, that sounds fine. That sounds good. Steve, you want to give your talk about how to get involved in this?
Yeah, so with what I just did, I actually have relatively made it very easy because you can raise your hand, but you can also, when we allow for comment, you can just make comment at that time. Also, if you wish to make public comment, you can go to public comment at newtowntownship.org and make your public comment there. I will monitor that throughout the meeting. If you have any trouble whatsoever of sharing your comment, or if you phoned in and you need to share, please send an email to publiccomment@newtowntownship.org. And again, public comment is all one word, as is Newtown Township. If you do that, like I said, I'll be monitoring that throughout the meeting and be able to share that there's public comment to be made. Bruce, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, I'm calling to order. And the first thing I'm going to do is take roll call. I'm here, Bruce Killen. Cindy, are you here? Cindy Mahal?
Yes, here.
Janet Kravanis?
Here.
Sheila O'Sullivan Feeney? Okay. Harry Bryants?
Here.
Jason DeCecco is not here. He sent me a note. Joe Pinto?
Here.
Steve Neese, Leonard Altieri?
I'm here.
And Mike Russo?
Here.
Okay. Let's then move to a moment of silence. Okay. Next item is to approve this agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great. Agenda's been approved. Next are the minutes. There's a typo here. The meeting was in fact on the 11th and not the 6th. But do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the 11th?
Well, I have a question. I had a correction.
Yes.
About the pop-up tree project. It's a pop-up garden, not a pop-up tree.
Okay.
Be nice if the trees could pop up that quickly.
Okay, I'll make a change to that.
Okay.
Any other changes? You had something, Cindy?
Yeah, on the item directly above that, it says the township has met all of the requirements for Tree City designation.
Yes.
I thought that one of the requirements was to have an arborist and that we didn't have one yet.
They did not have that on their list this year. I was
Wow.
surprised about that too.
Okay.
That was the way it was in previous years, the past half dozen years, but they didn't ask anything about an arborist.
And just so you know, too, the Board of Supervisors on Monday of last week authorized the RFP to go out for the arborist. So we will, the request is out there.
It's great.
That's fabulous. I was aware of that and that's great.
Yeah, I would have liked to have had it for when we reorganized, but I'll be quite frank. I think that the wires just got crossed on just communication issues. So it's our fault as a board. It's not Steve who's overworked right now, but it is going forward, which I'm extremely excited about.
Yeah,
It
us
should be
too.
great. Next, Megan, are you here?
I'm here.
Okay. Well, Megan, you're next on the agenda. Do you want to introduce yourself and do any screen sharing that you might need?
If you don't mind to let me share my screen, that'd be great. Thank you.
Perfect.
All right. Megan, you should be able to share your screen.
Excellent. I'm Meghan Lockman. I am the Executive Director of the Chester Ridley Crum Watersheds Association. And thank you guys for having me today. I'll just give you a quick rundown of who we are and what we do and why we do what we do. I know several of you are more than well aware of Chester Ridley Crum Watersheds Association, but hopefully this will introduce us to the rest of you. So we have 3 wonderful creeks in our catchment area, the Chester, Ridley, and Crum Creeks, running throughout Delaware and Chester counties. And we have some really cool spots in our creeks, and we have some spots that really need a lot of help. Actually, of our 3 creeks and all their tributaries, they are considered impaired in 95% of them. And impaired can mean a lot of different things throughout our area. In these creeks, the main issue is actually due to sedimentation. And so I have some lovely pictures of creeks here, but also some that show you just the kind of issues that we're dealing with on a regular basis. So CRC Watersheds, our mission is to support, encourage, and promote the enjoyment, restoration, conservation, protection, and prudent management of the natural resources of the Chester, Ridley, and Crum Creek watersheds. And that is such a mouthful. I have never once been able to say that without reading it. So I apologize if that was a little bit more than you needed to hear right now. We were formed in 1970, actually on the first Earth Day in 1970 by a group of folks down in Swarthmore who were a little bit worried that the Blue Route was going to go right through the Crum Woods and some very special habitat that's located in that original forest. So it started out really as an advocacy group of just a few folks and has evolved and changed over the last now 51 years. And we've done a variety of programs throughout that time. We've had tree planting programs, educational programs that have taken a variety of looks to them. We've done water quality monitoring, streams cleanup, invasive management and plant maintenance, community outreach, and frankly, one of the most important things we've done is work with our volunteers because we couldn't do what we do without our volunteers. And we have moved a few times over the last 50 years, but our home right now is the Garrett Farmhouse, an old 1800s farmhouse at the Okahawking Preserve right there on Westchester Pike in Newtown Township. We take over the first floor, some of the second floor, and the Newtown Township Parks and Rec Department has some shared space with us as well. It's a really nice place to work. Haven't been there in a while, but it is nice when I do get out there. There's hiking to be done, and it's certainly a beautiful view, especially on a snowy day like this. It would have been nice. So one of the things we do try and do is community outreach, and we have had a variety of activities. We have picnics, we have volunteer recognition picnics, we've had community open houses. We have had great plans to do a lot for this past 50th year that didn't come to fruition, obviously. But this is just part of our way of reaching out to folks and saying, you live in a watershed and here are some great things you can do to help out. Another piece of what we do is education, and that's taken a variety of forms in the past. We've done things that are more specific. We've worked with municipalities on their MS4 programs. We've held events that have certain, that go towards whether elementary school students and that sort of thing. We've brought people out. But our current environmental program is really centered around 2 things. One is the more what I would call the informal education, which is when we have an event, whether that's a planting or a cleanup, we have folks who walk around with our volunteers and just talk to them. And, you know, they have questions about the watersheds or why they're doing what they're doing. And we talk to them about that. Then we have the more formal piece. And I use formal in very sarcastic quotation marks because it's called Science on Tap. And we started this program a few years ago with a professor who talked to us about using the water in our watersheds to make beer. And it has since then been a thing that we do at a variety of different locations throughout the watersheds, generally at a bar. And we have somebody come in and talk about different things. So we've had someone from the Partnership for the Delaware Estuary talk about freshwater mussels. We've had the beer one, like I said. And then last year, just in the nick of time in late February, we had someone come in and talk about how they are removing a lot of the dams along the Brandywine River and how that will impact the American shad. It's a lot of fun. And as you can see with that lower picture, it's usually a bunch of people crammed into a space. I can hardly imagine that anymore. So what do we do now that we're outside, whenever we're outside? One of the pieces of our puzzle is STREAMBANK stabilization. And so we've been involved in programs that have used things like riprap or more mechanical type of stabilization. But one of the things we've tried to do more recently, and this particular project was in the Saul Sanctuary in Rose Valley, is use natural impact. And so we had, I didn't actually do this. We actually had to contract this part out, but we had them come in and they re-sloped and then added in these coir logs to hold it in place while we planted willows and dogwood fascines to help stabilize the bank. And it actually works really well, but it is pretty labor intensive. So last year, like I said, was our 50th anniversary and we had great plans. We had all these tree plantings. We were going to have our big streams cleanup, a big, huge birthday party. I was really working on this like 3-foot by 2-foot cake. I mean, we were going to have pony rides. It was going to be this great birthday party. We were going to have nature walks and all of our summer maintenance. We were going to do a huge birthday party later in the year when we thought we couldn't do it in May. That didn't happen. And then we ended up having our awards dinner virtual this year. So what do we normally have? What do we normally do? We usually bring out groups of volunteers. And any given year, we're bringing out between 600 and 1,100 volunteers, depending on the different programs we're running over the course of the year. And so our volunteers are really the backbone of what we do. We're a really small group. There are only 5 of us that work in the office. We're all part-time, myself included, as the executive director. So really, we can't do anything without our volunteers, and they help us with everything from our plantings to our cleanups to working at our events. And you'll see in the lower right there, we have what we call our yellow shirts. And some of these folks are board members, but some are just volunteers who really are excited about CRC and are happy to talk about our watersheds with all the folks who come out and help us. The main piece of what we do now, besides the education, is tree planting and streams cleanup. Stream bank stabilization is part of it, but that's kind of a side bit. But really, we do tree planting and we do streams cleanup. And so our planting events are usually spring and fall. And last year, our spring ones got postponed, I suppose, until the fall. But we go out to a site that has been chosen through a variety of means. We may meet someone who says they work for a certain township that has an MS4 problem, and they know that they can help that with a tree planting. Of course, I guess the question might be asked, how does that help? Well, since sedimentation is the major issue within our watersheds, planting trees and shrubs, native trees and shrubs, it helps to hold the soil in place and reduces the sedimentation. And so that's our main goal here is to hold back any of the sediment, as much sediment as we could, I'm sorry. We also do invasives management and tree maintenance. So once we plant the trees, we have to make sure that they are maintained, they don't get overgrown and that sort of thing. And then before and also during tree planting events, we have to actually make space for these plants to go in. To be honest, this is my favorite part because you get to go in and basically demolish an area, right? I mean, it's like demo day for being outdoors. You get to, and we have, what you don't see in this picture that happened right before this was people swinging on vines, trying to pull them out of the trees. It's a lot of fun. And then we do a streams cleanup. This actually happens every year, minus last year, in April, right around Earth Day. We bring out anywhere from 600 to 800 volunteers, picking up 10 tons of trash over the course of a morning. We go out to about 35 different sites throughout the watersheds. This year it didn't happen. We are restarting it. It will be March 20th this year. And we are also hoping to slowly over time evolve the program to include smaller cleanups throughout the year, probably not 2 more big days or anything like that, but smaller ones throughout the year. So how did we stay busy this past year when everything was so strange? Well, thankfully, we did receive a PPP loan. So the majority of our time was taken up with individual projects. Our tree planting coordinator, who is, you see here kneeling, would normally bring out volunteers to help us throughout the summer to maintain our plantings. He actually went out there alone and just did a bang up job getting things accomplished to keep our plants growing healthfully. I find something interesting in that middle picture. You can see that very specific line of demarcation between the two. We have, well, many of our sites, but this one in particular has a large knotweed issue. And I'm sure that you guys have battled that yourselves. And so we tried a variety of ways of getting rid of it. We've tried the spraying in November and mechanical removal and that sort of thing. But one thing we did at this site was when we planted, we put down rolled cardboard and then mulch on top. And you can see the difference. We really wanted to test this out between the normal things we would try in this cardboard, and the cardboard really made a big difference in terms of keeping the knotweed down. The other things we did on the background, mainly what I was doing, and some of our other development programs, were updating and improving our website. We worked on our social media outreach, working on policies, behind the scenes work, and planning for all kinds of future scenarios. I think we all had to start doing that this past year, and trying to do grant applications as well. Last fall, we were able to get back outside. We brought out very small groups at a time to do our invasive removal, little cleanups, maintenance, a couple of tree plantings, the ones that we had moved from spring into the fall. And then we got in some nature hikes as well. We did our annual awards dinner, which normally would be a nice big event, silent auction, all those kinds of things. We did it all virtually. And I know Cindy Mahalo was our featured speaker. Thank you very much.
Yay.
And then I just wanted to kind of go over how we are able to do what we do. Our funding sources. We have individual donors, foundations, corporate donors, and grants. And then our 2 main tree planting grants are through the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. So really that's what we do. We are very simply, we plant trees, we clean streams to try and make our watersheds a better place. And I am happy to answer any questions you may have about CRC or anything else.
I have one question for you, Megan.
Sure.
How far down do you go on Crum Creek in terms of the activities you're involved in?
Everywhere from the headwaters to where it empties into the Delaware. We actually are doing a planting, we're doing an invasive removal this month and then a planting in April up in Malvern right at the headwaters. And then we also take it all the way down to Chester and Eddystone, I guess.
Megan, I have a question with regard to your invasive management. We've been looking at this because we're going to do this for our Brookside project, but we've been given guidelines as to not to pull and tug right now because the trees are in dormancy. Do you pull and tug off of the vines that are encroached in the trees just during the summer, or when do you? You know, you said the guys were hanging off the vines. We've
Sure.
been
Right. That's during the growing season. You're right. So what we're doing right now with our invasive removal, we pick our sites very specifically depending on what is needed. And so we'll be going out and cutting down a lot of privet at this particular site this month.
Okay. And another question is, what do you do, let's say for the ivy or the vines, do you do anything to the top, you know, as you remove the base, at the base of the root without necessarily pulling or tugging at the root system? Do you paint the top of the ivy with a concentrated Roundup as we've been advised to do?
Yes, and actually, so our tree planting coordinator, David, who I showed you in some of those photos, he also is a certified application specialist. And so he goes through and takes care of all that for us.
Because we're planning to do the same thing and we don't want any, you know, to overspray. So we're going to be really exact with how we apply
Right.
that.
Right.
Right.
That's why we wanted to make sure he did it, because he would be very, very specific.
Well, we're trying to get the guidance from as many professionals as possible. So great on that. Thank you.
I ask a question about this stream stabilization. Have you found either the riprap or the natural to be more effective, or are they both sort of the same?
They both do a great job if they're kept up well. So here was part of the issue we did find with the natural version was we didn't account for deer in the same way. We always account for deer when we do a tree planting. It's natural. We put in a tree, we put a cage around it. You know, we keep the deer away. Didn't really put that into practice for this until one season in, and we realized what had happened. And so we went back and replanted a few things and put up some fencing.
So with that being said, in terms of the natural stabilization option, does that have to be, I'm assuming based off of that answer, does it have to be replaced, after so many years, or no?
It shouldn't.
Okay.
It shouldn't. I mean, you do have to obviously just keep looking at it with when it floods and that sort of thing. And if there's a spot that is looking like some things got washed away, you can replant. But in theory, the type of plants that are put in there are designed to withstand those kind of problems.
Thank you.
Megan, I noticed you mentioned dam removal on the Brandywine. I bet you've got a lot of dams on these 3 streams. Have you guys ever focused about dam removal on the Crum or the Ridley or the Chester?
We have not. I know there was a project, I would say it was probably 15 or more years ago, before I had even moved to the area, where we were involved with one of those. That is not something anybody that we have on staff has any expertise in. So we have not done that. On a personal note, I think it's great and I would love to, but it's just not something we've gotten into. Yep.
Well, I've been talking to the people of American Rivers who are very much big on dam removal, and they've been very supportive and helpful. So it's a resource. But
that's great. I'm going to actually write that down. Thank you.
I can send you
private property.
I can send you the name of a woman who's responsible for Pennsylvania.
That's great. So a lot of what we do, in fact, all of our tree planting programs, we are required to do on public land. So that's also a part of, I think, we haven't gotten into a lot of those private land issues where I think you would find, like you said, a lot of the dams and that sort of thing.
Megan, I've got a question with your tree planting. Do you do the bare root system, or do you, what system do you use, and which do you prefer?
We prefer to have ones that come out of, pots. And the reason is when you get a bare root tree, you get it and you have to put it in the ground. There's really not a lot of room for error. And there are a lot of times whether, we try and do plantings starting in March. You may have a snowstorm. And so you've got your stock of your plants and they're sitting on the porch at our farmhouse waiting to go in. And if it snows and we can't plant them that week, well, if they were bare root, they're gone. So there are just a lot of reasons that we decided not to do bare root. Although I realize that through PHS and a few other folks, that's kind of the way a lot of them are trying to go. But we've just decided it doesn't work with our volunteer model.
The other thing is worth mentioning is Crum Creek is basically the watershed is half of our township from 252 west. That's correct, right?
Yeah.
And the other's Ridley or Darby, of course.
Yeah, Darby, yes.
Do you think, Megan, that you're seeing more flooding on these 3 streams than historically?
Yes, I think so.
Anecdotally, but you've not been.
Right. Correct. Anecdotally, we have, and we have, and I say that we have some folks who have lived on the creeks for their whole lives. And so they've noticed it and they have mentioned it to us. We have some videos and photos that kind of show the same thing, but you're right. We haven't put any flood monitoring in there to know that for sure.
That's very, very helpful. It was a good presentation and we thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.
Megan, what can we do? Megan, what can we do to help?
Honestly, 2 things would be great. One would be if you ever want to come out and volunteer with us and check out what we do, please come to our website, follow us on whatever variety of social media you feel like. and we'll let you know what's happening. And the second is we're always looking for places where we can help. So you guys know where you need help within Newtown, whether that's with a tree planting or a cleanup or a rain garden. I know we're going to eventually try and help you guys, Cindy. Eventually we'll get out there with you. Whatever it is you think you may need, we actually have funding specifically for tree plantings, but we can find ways to do other things that are ready to go. We have both our state and our federal grants allow us the flexibility to choose programs that are already funded from our end. So that means that we can use it wherever we see fit, as long as we're, riparian buffer close to the streams, that sort of thing. So if you can think of places, please let us know, because we're always looking for more opportunities to help out.
Well, we should probably tell,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cindy.
we should probably tell you then, Megan, about a couple initiatives that are underway. One is that Bruce and I worked with the township a couple months ago to apply for 2 grant applications to plant at least over 100 trees in the Crum Creek watershed along Ellis Road and Bishop Hollow Road. There's a park there, which is adjacent to an undergrounded stretch of an unnamed tributary of Hunter's Run, and then and along the baseball field there. So one of the grants we've heard back from, the other one when do we hope to hear on the other one, Bruce?
I'm not sure of the schedule of that yet, Cindy.
It's a while, I think, maybe later in the spring. So anyhow, that's a tree planting coming up that we can perhaps partner with you on. And then separately from that, Bruce, I don't know if you want to mention to her about the tree plan for the township. The 1,000 trees.
Was that for me? I'm sorry.
Yes, Bruce, if you want to mention that to her, I know that was your idea.
Yeah, what we'd like to do is plant 1,000 trees in 5 years. And it's going to require a lot of planning and money, and working with probably people on their private property, which is going to create a challenge for us. I don't know how much of a challenge, but I suspect it's going to be difficult to get permission to work with people on their property, and concerned about the commitments they might have to make to us if we do provide them with any trees. But it's an exciting project. It fits in with MS4, and it fits in with the aesthetics of the township.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So our typical tree plantings take place on one day with anywhere from 50 to 150 trees going in a one certain area,
Sure.
Not usually, multiple people's homes and that sort of thing. But if there's anything if you find a spot where you want to put more than 1 or 2, please let us know. We'd be more than happy to help.
It sounds great.
Yeah, Megan, the plan is to do 500 in each of our watersheds. So it would be 500 in the DCVA area and 500 in the CRC area. And as Bruce said, some of it may need to be like street trees in neighborhoods along the right of way. But we're also looking at areas with larger plantings on township property, or maybe working with larger landowners, such as maybe the school district or houses of worship or things like that. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. And, one of the places where we've put in a lot of trees before, and I know that they had some damage and they could use it again, was at Garrett Williamson. So that certainly was a good spot to find. They have plenty of need, let me put it that way,
Yeah.
with all this going on. Yeah.
Any further questions for Megan?
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for all you do, Megan. It's great
Yeah.
to have an active watershed association.
Wow. Best
You can
job I
hang
ever
out
had.
you can hang out if you choose to, or you can say goodbye to us. But
Thanks. I'll listen in for a little while till my
Okay.
kids drive me crazy.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, we're now to some old business. And the spring activities. I'm not sure that we need to discuss too much about the spring activities other than picking a date or dates for our decision as to whether to go or not. And I'm thinking that date could be our next meeting. Are there reasons that we couldn't do it at our next meeting?
Well, could I discuss the pop-up garden? The
Sure.
pop-up garden, because I had a Zoom meeting with Valley Forge Audubon this past Tuesday. And we were discussing whether or not to move the pop-up garden until the fall, which they are kind of leaning towards. But I know we had also talked about having it perhaps in the spring. I need to know, like from Steve Neese, if he thinks that the administration building is going to be open and functioning at that point, or if not, then the thought is to move the pop-up garden to the Gather in the Circle, where it would get more attention. Is Steve still with us?
I am.
Yes.
So the best answer I can give you is I doubt that we'll be doing things in person here in regards to coming in the building
Okay.
before. And again, this is changing constantly. And a lot has to do with when we think we'll have a good control related to the vaccine. And so I've been told that there, everything I watch, there's different things saying when that's going to be and when that's not. But let's assume, if we would for a moment, that they're thinking that by June that there's going to start being enough people vaccinated to start allowing for some, more openness. But the one thing I would say regarding the pop-up garden, we still, if tackling it here at the township building is a matter of people seeing it, even though we're not open, the building itself, we still have a large number of people that are coming to the township site, the site here. The baseball field or the turf area is being used regularly by people getting out. The basketball court's being used regularly by getting out. People are walking. People are coming and sitting at the benches that are in the area where the pop-up garden would be.
Okay.
So I don't want it all to be, do I think it would be better attended if obviously the building's open? I absolutely do. But do I think that there's an opportunity to still get a significant number of people to see it? Particularly if, we've been talking about putting it near the corner of the Ellis and Bishop Hollow.
Yes.
If we did a banner with it, we might be able to draw people to stop and enjoy it. And on one level, for me, I'm looking for us to find activities that encourage people to get outside and enjoy the fresh air. And, we don't want people to congregate necessarily, but it's still a good opportunity for people, to take their kids out and to see it. So, a nice banner with it may be enough to draw enough of people to stop and enjoy that. And I do think, you were talking about the Gather in the Circle group as well over St. Albans Circle, that, they're ready to kick off come spring as well, potentially with the farmer's market. And I think if they're going to do the farmer's market there, it would be good to have it here and then move it over to that location and really take advantage of, giving people some, maybe some multiple things to do in the area, that it's not just the farmer's market. They could walk over to the pop-up garden. We could make that be aware. And, I think there's some options. And so I guess part of me is hoping that we still are able to do it this spring, because I think people need an opportunity to get out and to just be outside.
Okay, so let me tell you how I think this is exactly what we will be able to do. But we already have the banners. We have 2 banners that are really nice, 6 feet long, at least, I think. It's gardening with nature in mind. And so the thought had always been to put it in at the administration building and then to move it to the circle in the square. We can still do that because I was discussing that with Newtown Square in Bloom. I joined them on a Zoom on the 27th. And I have also said that I'd be part of the farmers market because of this whole planning to move the pop-up garden. And then what I think we try to do, everyone, is to do some webinars about native plants. And for one, Steve McGraw has volunteered to do a webinar for us. And I have a couple of other fingers in the pot of people that I could perhaps do some of that webinaring where we could store it on the township's website. So then I'm going to go ahead with that kind of planning. Maybe not have a pop-up garden as big as what Tyler was going to put in, but we'll plan on something. And we were going to do it in conjunction with the International Migratory Bird Day, which is May the 8th. So it would go in by the 5th and move and stay until the 12th and then move over to the circle, gather in the circle. So if that's okay with everyone, I'll go ahead with that kind of planning.
Back to my original question. Are you saying you're certain we're going to go forward, or there's still a tentativeness about the plans?
No, I'm saying that we could do the outside as long as Steve thinks that we have enough activity there, that people are going to see it. I didn't want it to just sit there and have our nice blooms and nobody can appreciate them. But
okay, we're assuming it's going to happen then, right?
yes, the outside. We will plan not to have the indoors activities, and we'll see how we move forward with that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think if we can do some virtual kinds of things and, put up some webinars and do that, we've had some pretty good attendance for some of those things. And, if we get the word out, 2 things I'll tell you, people are attending that if they're interested. And the great thing about doing it that way, people don't have to be in Newtown on that day. If they happen to be down at their shore house because it's, May and that's where they want to be, they can still participate, and if we do record it and put it on the website, then people can enjoy it for ongoing. And I think there's some benefit to that as well.
Okay, good.
Cindy, the rain garden. When
Bruce,
do you need to make that decision?
I'm going to talk this week with Meghan, who was just on joined our meeting, and our vendor, Greenweaver, and see how they want to move forward. And I'll try to have a decision by the end of the week.
Oh, great. And the Arbor Day, go ahead.
Yeah, Arbor Day. I did talk with Parks and Rec, and they, of course, are definitely supportive of this, and they will work with us to do this. And I also did talk with our students at St. Anastasia and thank them for offering. But right now we know that because of COVID, we're not going to involve them this year, but we want to keep that connection going strong. So when things get better, we can include them again. We did talk some tentative dates last month of possibly April 24th, which is a Saturday. Earth Day is the 22nd. Or since Arbor Day is the 30th, that would be May 1st. We talked about possibly, since George has inventory within his own nursery, we could try to plant those first, and that way George will be able to restock his trees when they're available come around Earth Day, April 30th. So if we wanted to do it April 24th, that was a possibility. But you know, we don't need a lock-in date, but it would be helpful since we're trying to communicate with Parks and Rec if we do have at least a tentative date in the next coming weeks, but it's something that we got to confirm with George and with EAC and with Parks and Rec and Newtown Square and Bloom. So there's a couple people you got to make sure that we start at least getting a tentative date going.
Okay. So if we wait until March to make the go, no go decision, is that a problem for you?
I don't have a problem with it. I think we were just trying to get a tentative date to at least make sure that everyone kept their days available if we do get a go. And that way we still have till the middle of March to decide if things are, you know, a definite go or not. But at least I think if we at least have a date to consider, it might be something worthwhile. What do you think?
That's fine. And also I spoke to George about acquiring bare root trees, and his intent, regardless of what we do, is to purchase those trees or acquire the trees. So we'll be all set there.
Yeah, I think that the conversation that George and I had was that if there wasn't actually a planting being able to be done as like a group activity, I think some of those trees were going to be used that we have in the nursery now in other locations that we know they need to go, and his guys would just plant them.
So I did receive an email recently from PHS about the placing the tree orders. And did you get that also, Bruce, and perhaps George?
I'm not sure I saw that, but I can't speak for George, but I got the impression he was all caught up.
Okay.
Assuming that he saw it. I can run that down with George.
Well, because that would have the date of when the bare root trees are available, if that was going to impact Sheila's date at all, or our date.
Yeah, but I remember, guys, George did say he would like to, he had enough in his inventory of his nursery. If we were just talking about an 8 or 10 to 10 trees, we weren't talking a big amount of trees because it was a smaller group, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think he had that available in his nursery. Mm-hmm. And if you wanted to, again, if April 24th is a good day, we can check with, but I think we should at least offer dates up to Parks and Rec and Newtown Square and Bloom and the other organizations just to give them an idea.
Yeah, yes, that's fine.
Sounds good.
So everyone's fine with April 24th?
Sure.
As long as George is good. Okay. And then you can make the decision next month or even middle of March, decide to, if things aren't good, we'll just, table it till the fall.
Okay. Well, what we have to do between now and then is pass a resolution for Arbor Day. We do it annually, but I can take care of putting that together and forwarding it to the supervisors. Further comments on spring activities?
Well, I don't know whether or not with Parks and Recs, Wade has spoken with George, but he wanted to move actually a permanent garden at that site where the pop-up garden is going to go. Something that I had brought up at the Newtown Square in Bloom meeting called Pocket Meadow. And it's something that I would like to see our residents consider or just be aware of, that if we just planted a corner of our property, took it out of grass, which doesn't support any pollinators, and created little pocket meadows, that would be a way of supporting the pollinators that move up the East Coast and perhaps joining the pollinator pathway. I gave that suggestion to Newtown Square and Bloom because I thought we were on overload anyway, and it seems to fit well with Newtown Square and Bloom. So I'll follow up with what Wade is suggesting. And I also wanted the committee to know that John Custer reached out from the CRC to do a bird walk. And so he has already contacted Garrett Williamson. We're just looking for a leader to do our bird walk, and that will be in May also.
Great.
Bruce,
Okay. Go ahead, Cindy. We're going to say something.
yeah, another event that has popped up in the last week, and Steve, I don't know if you were on the email, but George might have mentioned it to you, is Meghan Hopkins Dorr from the Master Watershed Steward Program has been looking for a place to do some piloting of live staking, which is a stream bank restoration method. And she's been talking to Karen Willwall from the DCCD about doing this at Brookside Park. And Steve, has George mentioned anything to you about this?
I think I saw something in an email, but we haven't had a chance to just talk about it yet.
Okay, well, yeah, I haven't had, last week was really busy with it for me, and I haven't had a chance to move forward on this, but they are very keen on doing this in Brookside Park, probably in March. And they have reached out to George, and I circled Eileen Nelson in the loop because I want to make sure this coordinates with MS4. And I don't have anything definitive yet. I just know that the wheels are in motion, and I've got to get caught up on that this week.
If I could just ask one thing, when these dates get set in stone and they're concrete, if they can also, Bruce, if you can just send an email to Steve to make sure that the supervisors know about it, because I know that a couple of them have expressed interest in wanting to come to these events, and normally we find out about them after the fact. I mean, I don't, because I usually attend some of these meetings, or a majority of these meetings, but I know a lot of them have expressed interest in doing some of these projects. So I just want to make sure that they're kept in the loop with it as well.
I do two things. One is just make them aware of these events without giving specific dates. And then when we lock in the dates, we can communicate that to them as well.
Sounds good.
So Leonard, in addition to with EAC, but Parks and Rec, because of COVID, what we're doing at at Brookside Park is that we're identifying all the invasive vines that are killing our trees down there. And George is going to go in there and mark the vines, because we have to make sure that he agrees with what vines we're going to go in and take. And he's either going to mark them with either spray paint or with pink flagging tape. Then we will individually, as let's say you and a friend, or maybe you and another supervisor, we can go in and we're going to have coordinated days that we're going to follow the protocol, which George will agree to, and we can go in and kind of try to attack these vines. So maybe you and another supervisor want to arrange that as well, and you can do that at your leisure as well.
Yeah, I like how you separated a friend or a supervisor. Thanks. We all get along though, because I know, Paul sent out the email from Newtown Square and Bloom with all the dates, and so I did forward that off, because it's great when anyone can have future dates for things, and a lot of times Newtown Square and Bloom does things in the afternoon, so it's difficult for a lot of us. But I want to make sure that they know of the other. And I think it carries more weight, quite frankly, when it comes from, Bruce Killen or Cindy Mahalo or anyone from this committee, as opposed to, another email from me or another email from Steve.
Okay.
Well, Len, how would we send that out? Because we don't have any of the supervisors' email addresses, so it would have to go through Suzanne Wolnanen.
You would be happy to know that of the 5 supervisors, 4 of us now have email addresses that are on the township website. And so you can contact the supervisors through their township issued email address. And for that 5th supervisor who does not believe in that, you can forward it individually to Suzanne Wolnanen.
Transparency in democracy. I love it.
It's coming. It's coming along.
It's coming along. Our elected representatives, we can now communicate with them. So that's wonderful news.
Yes.
I'm a trendsetter. What can I say?
And we're happy you come join us every month.
Yep.
I'm happy to be here.
I pitted the other supervisors who have to put up with your ego. Mike Russo will jump in on that one.
Yeah. Okay, on to item 8.2, which is the 1,000 tree initiative, the plan. I think we've got to continue to stoke the fire to make this happen. And to do so, we need a lead. Cindy, are you willing to continue to work like this, or and perhaps delegate elements of it?
I don't know what you mean, work like what?
Putting some structure around the exercise, putting a task force together, putting a schedule together, looking at funding, looking at real estate. Lot to do. It can be delegated. If you can't, I know you're busy working. If you can't do it, anybody else can raise their hand. And if they're not, if we don't get any takers, I'm happy to take that role in terms of moving this forward.
Yeah.
If you want the rain garden to happen this spring, I don't think I can do both. I'm like
Okay.
so busy with work.
I understand. Okay, unless someone else wants to sign up, I'll be happy to put some structure around the initiative.
Bruce, I might just mention that, we are going to have a little bit of time still before we kick this off.
Right.
In that we are still waiting for DEP to approve our plan.
Okay,
And so until they approve our plan, any trees we plant today don't count.
okay.
And so at least that's what I've been told.
Mhm.
And look, whether they, we probably still want to plant more trees in the thousands.
Sure.
I just want to make sure that we understand that anything we do prior to that plan being approved
Mhm.
may or probably won't count towards the MS4 part of the project if we're wanting it to count with that.
And Steve, I know I've heard you say that before, and we're really aware of that. I just think that there's several months of ramping up before you can even start to think about putting a tree in the ground. This is such a big endeavor. You've got to have a plan. Otherwise it's going to be chaos. You've got to get people in place. You've got to get protocols. You've got to identify locations and funding, and the funding cycles sometimes are very timely and you have to wait for windows of opportunity. So I would not wait.
I'm not saying to wait to do the
get all the
groundwork.
administrative stuff in place.
Yeah, I'm not saying to wait to do the groundwork. I'm just saying, just understand, like, even if we do this one tree planting this spring or fall, depending on when we do it, if they haven't approved it, even if we plant the 100 trees, it wouldn't count. And so, I just, and that's okay, because we probably need to plant another 100 trees. But if you're thinking about it in light of trying to count towards the 1,000, the way we've done it, it has to tie with the other. And I totally agree that all the legwork can be done now. Just, we need to know we can't pull the trigger on the actual sticking the tree in the ground if we want it to count until that point.
Yep, got it. Thanks for the reminder.
So in terms of that plan, stay tuned. I'll have something at our next presentation, at our next meeting in March to, like I said, continue to move this forward. Further comments on the tree planting?
No, other than to say, I thought Cindy's proposal was a good proposal. I mean, I may be constructive, but I thought having a sort of a representative group from the township take charge of this would be instructive.
Yep.
Yes.
Harry, do you want to lead that group?
I'm just saying, I thought it was a good idea.
Well, it sure would be nice to get that 600 to 800 volunteers that
Yes.
CRC has to help.
Okay, the next item is 8.3 in the farmer's market. The only thing that we have there is, well, everybody's aware of this plan to have farmer's market up at the Circle this summer. And we've all been asked, we were asked at the last meeting about volunteering, and a number of us signed up. And what I think we need is a coordinator for the EAC, so each one of us doesn't have to have contact with the folks over at Circle in the Square. And looking for a volunteer that could play that intermediary role to, wouldn't be that much, just to coordinate the EAC participation in the farmer's market. Do I have any, and I'm not taking this one. Do I have any volunteers?
I did say because of the pop-up garden that I felt I was kind of involved in that.
No, great.
I think it definitely helps for all of the different groups to be interconnected.
Yep.
I don't know if anyone else, I will join. Whether or not I become the person who reports back, I don't know. But if not, I will be.
Okay.
So I know I'm not a member of the EAC, but I'm since I attend a lot of these, if you struggle with finding someone who wants to be that liaison, if you will, I'm going to be the supervisor person for that farmer's market. They reached out to me, and so I will be the one from the supervisors. I suspect Tina Roberts-Lightcap will be as well, since she is also a member of Gather in the Circle. So just to throw that out there, because I know you guys have been doing a lot, and a lot of you are stretched out already. So if that just alleviates something, I can always just come back and report what's going on with that.
That sounds great.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion of item 8.3, the farmer's market?
No, I think we have our first meeting already scheduled for Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I know Linda's still involved from overseas.
Yes, she joined in the Newtown Square and Bloom Zoom on Tuesday.
Wow.
And so it was good to see her in the dark because it was nighttime there.
Okay, the next item is the new business, and I put together a presentation on where electricity goes in the township. So Steve, I've never done the screen sharing. What do I have to do to accomplish this?
Well, 1 second. All right, now that I stop share, if you look down at the bottom of your screen, there's like a green, bright green thing that says share screen.
I see it.
Okay, click on that.
Okay.
And you'll probably have a bunch of windows. There you go.
That's
Got it.
Good.
Good.
Good. You know, I've been thinking about how to, we get the most bang for our buck. And I thought about where energy is being consumed in the township. And the easiest place to really get metrics on and to understand how much energy use there is in the township is electricity, residential electricity. So I dug into that and put together this presentation. Now, hold on. Is there a secret to get the slides moving along, Steve, or is it my?
Well, I guess the question is, what did you share?
I've got a PowerPoint presentation with the.
Just try advancing it on your PowerPoint.
Just click with your mouse. It's not moving forward.
Oh, there it goes.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay. Like I said, this is a review of all energy used in the township based on some extrapolations that I did. I'd like to review that. The second thing that's contained in this short presentation is some discussion about switching to renewables through PICO. And then the third is, or actually the purpose of this is really to begin laying the foundation for us to communicate with residents of the community to take action about making a conversion. I looked at two things, and just to make things simple, on the left side, about a third of our energy consumption happens in the house. Another third happens in automobiles, our automobiles, and the final third is the folks that are providing us with goods and services. They're making this goods, they're delivering them, they've got a retail outlet. So if you think about each one equal about a third, I wanted to address, go ahead.
Oh, no, I thought you were frozen.
No, I'm back. And so I'm going to address on the left, the blue section, which is the residential section. And I've ignored oil heat and gas heat because, like I said, electric was easy to run down, and I have good numbers on that. Then on the right side, it shows where we're getting this electric from. And this is nationally, not, I couldn't get detailed numbers from PECO, but what you'll see is that fossil fuels take up the majority of the energy source. Nuclear takes up a big chunk. It actually surprised me. And even renewables takes up a bigger piece than I would have expected. PECO has more nuclear than most utilities, so we're receiving more of our energy from nuclear than this graph indicates. I looked at my electric bill and looked at some census data and did some math on individual homes. And the average home uses about 10,500 kilowatts a year. And we buy those kilowatts for about 13 cents. So the average house in the township spends about $1,400 a year on electricity. I'm not focused on the money part. I'm focused on the kilowatts and the implications of using that electricity. When you buy electricity from PECO, you're paying two things, and it's about half. Half the bill is for the transmission of the energy from its source to your household. That, you know, the telephone poles, the repair people, the administrative functions. The other thing is the actual supplier or the generation of those costs. That the money that goes to the power plants, or the monies that go to the solar fields. And like I said, they're about equal. I think the generation costs are about they're 6.7 cents per kilowatt hour, 6.43 cents. So we spend in the township, each resident, each residential unit, each house or apartment spends about $668 on some form of energy that we have the opportunity to make a selection as to what form we want to use. I then did some extrapolation.
Bruce, I just have a quick question. Go back 2 slides. One more slide. Go back. On that right-hand pie,
Yep.
is that the choices that people have made?
No.
In other words, they have the ability to elect renewables, and you're saying roughly whatever it is there, it looks like about 18% of the township have elected to get their electricity from renewables generation. Is that what that's saying?
No, what it's saying is that's the power plants, the power sources. So of all the fuel, of all the electricity consumed in the country, the blue indicates the aggregate capacity of all the power plants that are used, that produce that energy.
So that's countrywide.
Countrywide, yes, but PECO's not all that much different.
Okay, I mean, frankly, I'm surprised the renewables portion of that pie is as high as it is today. I mean, I know it's increasing, but I didn't know.
Right.
I was surprised too. It's like, I forget the number, 20% or something like that.
Yeah, it looks like it.
That includes water as well. So dams contribute to that number. So the Hoover Dam, for example, is in the renewable number.
But we don't know what the township, Newtown Township residents have chosen in the way of where they get their power from.
No, and that's the next slide. That's 2 slides down. I'll tell you.
Okay, all right.
On that.
I understand with that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I looked at the aggregate. It was really quite simple. I just took what the census said is the number of housing units in the township, 5,300. And residents really aren't part of the equation, but I was interested to see that the most recent census indicates we've got 13,973 people living in our township right now. I don't know. That's census data. That's what I use there. I talked about residential housing units using 10,500 kilowatts. And this is your question, Harry. How many people in the township have made the election to go to renewables? And this was my biggest guess. And I guessed 10% based on discussion with 4 people. So, but I had to come up with a number for my math.
Is that something Pico could tell you or no?
It wouldn't be Pico. I think at the Pennsylvania Utility Commission might be able to give us that information.
You know, Steve Clark might be able to find or tell us where we can find that information clearly.
Yeah, that would be good to know.
Because he works for Pico. And
Okay.
he knows, and there are options for finding out what our consumption is here through some of the materials that are available on Ready for 100.
Oh, great. Next slide. So I did some calculations here. It's kind of interesting. I multiplied houses times 90%. That's reflects that I took out the 10% of people that may or may not have chosen renewable. And I came up with 50 million kilowatts per year for the township residents.
Yeah.
I then converted it to how much CO2 is produced as a result of that usage. And each year the township generates 64 million pounds of CO2. It sounds like a crazy number, but that's what the math says.
64 or 46?
I'm sorry, 46 million.
Right.
And what that converts to is 63,991,575 car miles. So that level is, so 50,000 kilowatts equals 36 million miles, which is enough miles. I did the math on this too, to drive to the moon 150 times. So I'm thinking if, in terms of targets for making changes, I again multiplied the total houses times the 90%, and there are 4,796 houses that we could target to try to convince to go to renewables. I then went to a great site. Let me just go back. Lower right-hand corner, I make reference to sources. This is where I got all this information from. I got a few numbers from outside of this information, but Pico's got an abundance of stuff on their website. That's where I got my energy usage from. And that's where I got the information about the comparison cost. Power Switch PA is a great site. It's a Pennsylvania Utilities organization site that's geared towards having people make intelligent decisions about switching electric suppliers, and switching from oil to gas. So I check out that site if you have any further interest. Finally, I looked at the census data, which is actually very interesting. The most interesting part, aside from how it fits into this, is the number of houses owned by older folks and the number of houses that are owned by people without children under 18, or I'm sorry, children under 18. And in both cases, it tells me there's going to be a pretty significant democratic shift in the next 5 or 10 years in the township. I also got township.
Are these numbers for total residents and housing units 2010?
No, they're 2019.
Okay.
I got township records. U.S. Energy Administration has all kinds of stuff, as does the Environmental Protection Agency. That's where I got most of the CO2 numbers and the conversion numbers.
But now on that slide, you're assuming, aren't you, that nuclear gives off CO2?
What
No.
I did, that's a point. What I did is I looked at total kilowatt hours independent of, I guess it's an average of what the cost is to generate that kilowatt hour, or what the CO2 implications are of generating that. You have a good point. Maybe, I don't know where nuclear fits in the equation in terms of that number, but that's a good point. I looked at the Pennsylvania, or the utility, the PA Switch website, which has easily 100 choices to select as alternative energy providers. What I discovered was, of those 100, maybe 20 are offering renewable energy. The others are trying to sell you cheaper energy from conventional sources. So what I did is I looked at the 6 closest ones to Pico price, and you can see a couple are less and a couple are more. And the criteria for picking these items and these vendors was 100% renewable, no penalty for changing if you like to leave the program at some time, and they're also a fixed price. You have tons of flexibility here, but I wanted to kind of homogenize and make all these the same, so I went with this. Simple conclusion, I think from an EAC perspective, I think that converting people to using renewable sources for electricity is a huge bang for our buck in terms of trying to increase the sustainability of the township. I also believe that few people have made this change. I know I had made the change years ago. I don't have it now. And the reason I haven't changed is because of quite frankly, the marketing techniques of these companies. I get calls at home, I get mailings. I've got everything but text messages from these companies that are promoting their solution. So anyway, so finally, we have to figure out how to get people to act on this. And let's see if I put that in here.
I'm not going to stop it.
Hello? No. Anyway, I think what needs to be done is a little further investigation on the numbers I put together, specifically the user numbers, not the aggregate numbers. And then if we all agree, if it makes sense, we can't go after 5,300 housing units all at one time. but we could identify a neighborhood or a common group of housing units to go after. We also need to inform people how to make the change. I suspect few people know how to even make the change because they ignore the people with this aggressive marketing. And I thought you always had to do that, make the change by dealing with them. But in fact, you can do it all online without dealing with an aggressive salesman.
We did it online. It took 5 minutes.
Yep, yeah.
One of the
I
better
had it for a
companies,
number of years.
one of the better companies in this game is NextEra Energy, the largest producer of sustainable power in the United States. And they're on the list in our area. I mean, a bunch of them are. Some of them are resellers. I mean, some of them don't have any production capacity. They're just buying it from somebody else and reselling it.
Sure.
NextEra is producing it.
Mm-hmm. And Harry, if I can ask, are you spending more money or less money now that you're using renewable?
Bruce, I think it's about the same. But frankly, I think it's important enough. I'm prepared to spend a little bit more if I have to switch. But I think it's within the zone of 6.5 cents.
Yeah, I think so too. That's what I saw in the list that was put together by the Utility Commission. And I think that I think it's a good cause. And if it costs, me $50 a year, I'm happy to spend that money.
And I right now, I don't know whether anybody on this call is driving an electric vehicle. We don't. We drive hybrid. But I suspect in 5 years, everybody on this call, or a lot of people on this call, will be driving electric vehicles. At that point,
yeah,
it really makes sense to switch if you haven't switched beforehand, because otherwise you haven't really you've improved the problem, but you haven't finished the problem off. But if you have an all electric car and you're buying a solar and power, you're in the right place.
Yeah.
So may I chime in here? I had to step away. The plow guys in my driveway. Anyway, this issue of switching to sustainable energy will be part of the Ready for 100 project that we will become involved in. And so we'll get a lot of help with suggestions on how to go solar, how to go electric rather than gas, because gas, if you convert from oil to gas, you're still doing a fossil fuel. So I think that this information is very enlightening for us, and we can drill down and make it a bit more specific to our houses and how we can convert, get people interested in doing solar. There is I think it's 25% payback or reduction in cost if you do solar, convert to solar before the end of 2022. They've extended it. So we have, this would be part of the work that we will get into when we start with Ready for 100.
Makes sense. Harry, back to your comment on electric vehicles. I've seen 2 or 3 articles recently that make the argument that in terms of overall cost of ownership, a full electric car is the cheapest way to go right now. That is, if you don't buy a $100,000 status Tesla. If you buy the Nissan Leaf or something like that, they're saying that's because of the low maintenance costs.
And there are going to be a whole lot more alternatives within 5 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the issues.
Article on the electric cars in Sunday's Inquirer, and it was saying that majority of cars will be electric by 2030, and it was talking about how communities really needed to have facilities for recharge centering. And so I was even looking at Newtown Square because all we have is Whole Foods. So it's something to make sure that we're at least aware of, and as Janet said, it'll be part of our Ready for 100 initiatives.
Well, here's the other kind of dirty little secret about electric cars is you're paying to charge them every night. And I said we're using 14,000 kilowatts a year. They're saying each car is going to cost you 4,000 kilowatts more once you end up charging these things at home. And that's one point. The other thing is I know the electric company's concerned because it'll put additional demand on suppliers, and it'll put additional demands on their infrastructure. And they're worried about whether the transformers and the wires can, deliver almost twice the energy to homes that they're currently using. So lots going to happen in the next 10 years. Back to how to make the change, why to make the change, and our continuous challenges, how to communicate our plan to people and incent them to do something. So we're thinking about it and see if we can wrap some kind of a program around this.
That's a very good presentation, Bruce.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. That was great, Bruce.
Mhm.
Eye-opening.
Lots of great information.
Sure. Janet, we gave you 9.2, which is your update on your meeting at the Audubon Society recently.
Well, I kind of did mention that when I had spoken with Ralph Graves, who gave us the grant or approved our grant. The money would still be there. So I stay in touch with the Valley Forge Audubon. Also, I wanted to mention that for Ready for 100, I've been attending the Delaware and Montgomery County monthly Zoom meetings. So we have a lot of options for our planning, and we need to move forward with finding a task force as soon as the supervisors make up their, I'll say as soon as they pass our resolution.
We're targeting to have that in front of the supervisors at their second meeting in the month of February.
Okay, the 22nd, right?
22nd, yes.
Okay, good. Good.
I'm going to open the floor to any public comment now. Have anybody from the public that wants to?
Bruce, if I may,
Sure.
before we do public comment, I do have a request from an Eagle Scout, and they're going to be doing something before the Park and Rec group on Thursday night. And so, but there's I should say for an Eagle Scout project, not a request from an Eagle Scout. It's a scout who's going for his Eagle Scout, William O'Hara. He's a Marple Newtown high school student. He's a resident of Broomall. He's requesting to do 10 bluebird houses as a project for us, and was wondering if this group wanted to give any feedback in regards to potential locations that you might recommend for the birdhouses to be installed. And my understanding is he is working at making sure that they're doing this by social distancing, but they are looking in. He is wanting to do this probably this spring so he can get his Eagle Scout.
Okay. Well, let's. I think that's great. Why don't we deal with this offline, get caught up? And Steve, does he have a timeline where he wants some decisions made?
Yeah, he would like to have decisions made here at the beginning of February so that he can go and confirm he has to confirm with the Scout Council that he is going to do this. And so he needs permission from us to make it work.
Okay.
And I mean, we're going to give him permission. I think I don't see any reason not to. It just would be getting the details as to the location.
So may I suggest, May I suggest that Vince Schaefer from, I think the Meadow would be a great place to have bluebird boxes. I know there are some there already that have been placed by Episcopal. And Vince Schaefer is associated with Episcopal. He's since retired, but he knows it well. And he's one of our bird walk leaders. So I would like to see if he suggests whether or not we could put additional bluebird boxes in the Meadow, because that would be a great place for them.
Okay.
I have to contact him anyway about leading the bird walk.
That would be
Okay.
great.
Yeah, and I just agree with Janet's suggestion of consulting with a birder on the optimal location. Because I know bluebirds are very particular about the habitat that they require in terms of open space, distance to trees, access to fresh water. So it would be important to get a birder or a naturalist to endorse the location.
So
Okay,
in summary, Steve, we're all for it. We'll get back to you specifically with ideal locations.
Yeah, so what I might do, Janet, if it's all right with you, I might give him your contact information. So he
Okay.
can work, if he could work directly with you.
All right.
And I think that's part of his, learning process is doing the project.
Yes, right.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Item 10, we're moving to public comment. We're almost out of time, but I encourage anybody that has anything to say to jump in.
But first, I didn't know if you got a chance with Cindy did the phenomenal presentation at DCBA this weekend. She discussed the Greer Park. So if Cindy can give you a quick overview on that. But in addition to that, Melissa Murrah, who is the new Environmental Crimes Unit for Delaware County, which is the first county in Pennsylvania to have an Environmental Crimes Unit. She gave an overview and she gave some great information for us. So maybe Cindy can discuss that as well.
Good.
Oh, well, briefly, Lisa Moreau talked a lot about environmental justice or environmental crimes, which has a strong correlation with environmental justice and corporate pollution, neighborhoods that suffer disproportionate impact of the effects of pollution and therefore disproportionate number of health effects, toxicity due to lead poisoning, rates of asthma, things like that. Another speaker talked about toxic waste site cleanups. I talked about the Greer Park site plan process and just kind of gave an overview of where the township is today with a focus on the dam removal issue, since that is something that's of rising importance nationally.
One note to that fact was that Cindy brought up, which was in 2019, there's 14 dams removed in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania was the second highest state to have number of dams, followed only by first being California. So with the great decision of our supervisors and their bravery, Newtown Square will be adding to that number in 2021, God willing.
Yay.
Yeah, we do appreciate the support of the supervisors. I know it's not always a popular decision, but I think it is the one that will yield the best results for the most people.
Mm-hmm. And the animals.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to close the meeting. Steve's got to move on. I think all of us do. So I'll close the meeting and thank everybody for joining us this evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you,
Bye,
Bruce.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bye, everyone.